Imagine returning home after years away and finding everything gone. No footsteps, no voices, no signs of life at all. Only the wind moving through empty spaces where people once laughed, cooked, argued, and dreamed. That is exactly what John White felt on that strange day when he stepped onto the soil of Roanoke and found the entire colony vanished, leaving behind only one word carved into wood: Croatoan. One word, one clue, 100 plus souls missing. And the deeper you look into what happened, the stranger it gets. But to understand that moment of shock, we have to go back, long before the disappearance, to a time when England was crowded, smoky, and restless. In the late 1500s, London felt like a boiling pot with too many people and not enough room. Imagine narrow streets filled with the smell of burning coal, merchants shouting over one another, and everyone scrambling to survive. Life felt tight, compressed, like you were always bumping elbows with the world. Then along came Sir Walter Raleigh, a man who could talk his way into anything. He stood tall, confident, and charming, the kind of person who could make even impossible ideas sound reasonable. He convinced Queen Elizabeth I that building a new English world across the ocean was not only possible, but necessary. He painted pictures with his words of endless forests, fertile land, and a fresh start for anyone brave enough to cross the sea. And people listened, especially people who were tired of being stuck. So in the year 1587, a group of about 115 people decided to take the leap. But these were not warriors or professional adventurers. These were ordinary families, husbands and wives, parents with children, people who packed tools, seeds, clothing, maybe a family heirloom, and a whole lot of hope. They believed they were building a better future. Their leader, John White, was the kind of man who felt things deeply. He was thoughtful, gentle, and saw the world like an artist. He sketched landscapes, plants, and people with such care that even now his drawings still feel alive. He was not someone who barked orders. He was more like the steady father figure who tries to keep peace when everyone else is stressed. The ocean journey to Roanoke was supposed to be exciting, almost heroic. Instead, it was chaotic from the start. The sailors argued. The captain took routes he should not have taken. The passengers grew seasick. Food went bad. If you have ever been on a long road trip where everyone is tired and irritable, multiply that by 1,000 and put it on a rocking ship for weeks. That was the trip to Roanoke, and when they finally arrived, the welcome was worse than the journey. The remains of an earlier English settlement stood before them, broken and abandoned, houses sagging, fences falling apart, grass crawling over everything like nature had begun to erase the place. And the eerie part? No one knew why that earlier group had vanished. All they saw were the leftovers of some kind of struggle. Still, the new colonists tried to shake off the fear. They rebuilt homes, planted crops, and met native tribes in the area. Life was hard, but they were determined. They had crossed an entire ocean for this chance. But the land fought them. Crops failed. Storms tore through their gardens. Fish were scarce. Farming on Roanoke was like trying to grow a garden in sand. Every seed struggled. Every meal felt uncertain. And relationships with the local tribes were complicated. Some tribes were friendly and willing to help. Others carried painful memories from earlier visits by English explorers who had caused trouble. Soon, small misunderstandings turned into tension, and tension turned into fear. When food ran dangerously low, the colonists looked to John White. He was the only one they trusted enough to speak for them. They begged him to sail back to England to get supplies. He did not want to go. His daughter Eleanor had just given birth to her baby, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas. Imagine leaving your newborn granddaughter behind, not knowing when or if you would return. But he also knew that if he stayed, the colony might starve. So with a heavy heart, he agreed. He promised he would come back quickly. The moment he reached England, everything fell apart. War with Spain exploded. England pulled nearly every ship into battle. John White begged for a vessel to go back, but no one would risk it. It was like trying to ask for a taxi in the middle of a citywide emergency. Everyone had somewhere more urgent to be. 1 month passed, then 6, then an entire year, and then another, and then another. 3 long years crawled by while the colonists waited on the other side of the ocean. When John White finally returned to Roanoke, his heart must have pounded so hard he could hear it. He ran through the trees calling the names of people he loved. No one answered. The place was silent, completely silent. But what made this even stranger was that the colony did not look like it had been attacked. The houses were taken apart neatly, like someone had disassembled them carefully. No smoke damage, no broken weapons, no bodies. It looked like the whole group had simply packed up and walked away. And then John White saw it. The single word carved into wood, Croatoan, and another carving on a nearby tree, Crow. Croatoan was the name of an island not far from Roanoke. It was also the name of a friendly tribe whose people had been kind to the colonists before. John White believed the message was not a warning, but a location, a sign, a simple, "we moved this way" kind of clue. He wanted to sail there immediately. He tried, but the weather turned on him. A massive storm crashed in, and the sailors panicked, insisting they had to leave. John White was forced back onto the ship. He begged to return, but they refused. And that was it. He never saw his family again. So what really happened to the people of Roanoke? Some scholars think the colonists joined the Croatoan tribe peacefully, blending in and building new lives. It makes sense. Archaeologists have found English tools and objects on that island, and native oral histories speak about welcoming strangers. Others believe starvation or disease pushed the colonists inland, especially since tree ring studies later showed that Roanoke experienced one of the worst droughts in centuries. Imagine trying to grow food in a drought so severe that even trees struggle to drink. There is also the idea of conflict with hostile tribes, though the neatness of the abandoned settlement makes that unlikely. If there had been a fight, something would have been destroyed. Something would have been left behind. But nothing was. Another theory says the colonists followed the original plan and moved north to Chesapeake Bay, or that Spanish forces who controlled Florida and hated English colonies attacked them quietly. But again, no evidence. And then there are the strange pieces of the story that feel almost supernatural. The word Croatoan has popped up in odd places across history, linked to disappearances and moments of confusion. Edgar Allan Poe reportedly whispered the word before he died. A shipwreck once carried the same carving. A tree on Hatteras Island had it too, before a storm blew it down. There were hidden marks found under patches on John White's maps that may show secret fort locations inland. And even objects that archaeologists once thought were English turned out not to be after chemical testing, leaving the mystery twisting just when it seems ready to unfold. All these clues, all these theories, and yet the truth remains just out of reach. The most human explanation is also the most peaceful one, that the colonists joined a nearby tribe, survived through community, and lived out their days far from where John White expected to find them. But if that is the case, why did no one ever come forward? Why did the story end in silence? Why was there never a reunion, never a message, never a sign that they were safe? And what exactly did John White miss, hidden in the forests of the New World? The answer might be buried in the land even now, waiting to be uncovered. But to get closer to it, we have to take one more step into the unknown, because this mystery is about to get even stranger. The wind pushed through the empty Roanoke settlement like it was carrying whispers. Nothing moved, nothing called back. And as John White walked deeper into the silent village, he kept waiting for a voice, a footstep, anything that proved life still lived here. But the only sound was his own breathing. He checked every corner, every cabin, every patch of earth. Everything looked abandoned, but not destroyed. No broken walls, no torn clothing, no human struggle. This wasn't a place where people died. It was a place where people left. But where? His eyes kept drifting back to that carving, the word cut into wood with hurried hands. Croatoan. A place, a tribe, a direction, a lifeline. And even in his fear, he felt something shift inside him. The carving wasn't a warning. It wasn't a message of terror. It was a sign. It meant, we went this way. Follow. And he would have followed. He would have run. But the sea had other plans. The storm rose like a beast, blocking the path to the island where the answer waited. And in the chaos, the sailors dragged him back to the ship and forced him across the water, leaving the truth behind him as the waves swallowed the shoreline. Years passed. Not days, not months, years. The world went on while the mystery stayed frozen in time. John White never saw his daughter again. He never saw his granddaughter. He never learned if the people he loved were alive, or if the settlement's silence was exactly what it seemed. But time did not stop on Roanoke. Theories grew like vines, twisting in every direction. Some believed the colonists blended peacefully with the Croatoan tribe, building new families, sharing new lives, and disappearing into a culture that welcomed them. There were stories, quiet, steady stories of pale strangers living among the tribe. Stories of English voices learning new words. Stories of children with features from both worlds walking along sandy island shores. Other theories were darker. Some imagined the colonists pushed inland, starving and weak, wandering deeper into a land already suffering from drought. Some believed they joined tribes farther north, swallowed by new alliances. And a few imagined something more violent, other tribes or even Spanish forces. But the empty, peaceful settlement argued against that. The buildings were taken apart neatly. Tools were not left behind in chaos. There was no fire, no blood, no terror written in dirt or walls. Just absence, just quiet, just mystery. Archaeologists returned centuries later, brushing sand from metal tools found on Hatteras Island, tools that didn't belong to the Croatoan alone. English, but used differently, shared, adopted, blended. Even oral histories from the island carried whispers of newcomers who stayed, lived, and became indistinguishable from the people who took them in. If that was true, then the colony never vanished. It simply changed its name, its clothes, and its home. It became part of the land that brought it fear and hope in equal measure. But some discoveries only deepened the riddle. Artifacts once thought to be English turned out not to be. Marks on maps revealed hidden forts that still haven't been found. Every clue seemed to point forward, until the next clue pulled everything sideways. And so the mystery grew, not because there were no answers, but because there were too many. Standing on that same coastline today, nothing remains of the original colony. No homes, no fences, no footprints, just dunes, trees, wind, and sky. But if you listen carefully, very carefully, you might hear the echo of a story that never finished. A story paused in the middle of a sentence. Maybe the colonists survived. Maybe they thrived. Maybe they became part of something bigger than themselves. Maybe they left clues for John White that he never had the chance to follow. Or maybe, just maybe, they're closer than we think, hidden in the bloodlines and history of the people who still walk these shores. After all, the only thing more powerful than a mystery unsolved is a mystery that chooses not to be solved. And Roanoke? It has been choosing for more than 400 years. And that is the story that refuses to end.